Amara Okafor's world shattered the moment she pushed open the bedroom door of her Lagos penthouse. There, tangled in silk sheets she had bought with her own money, was her husband Chike writhing beneath her younger sister Nkem. The betrayal hit her like a freight train, not just the infidelity, but the cruel laughter that escaped Nkem's lips when she spotted Amara frozen in the doorway. "Oh, sister," Nkem purred, not bothering to cover herself. "You're home early from your little charity meeting. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from." Chike scrambled for his clothes, his face flushing with shame and defiance. "Amara, I can explain." "Explain." Amara's voice was deadly quiet. The woman who had clawed her way from the slums of Mushin to become one of Lagos's most successful real estate developers wasn't easily broken. But this domestic betrayal cut deeper than any business deal gone wrong. "Explain how you've been sleeping with my sister in my bed." The irony wasn't lost on her. 3 years ago, her father had practically sold her off to Chike Emeka, a man she barely knew, a simple hunter from Enugu who seemed gentle and kind. Her family had been drowning in debt, and Chike had appeared like a savior, offering to pay off everything in exchange for her hand in marriage. What they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that behind his humble facade, Chike controlled one of West Africa's most powerful underground empires. But Amara had built her own empire through sheer determination, and she wasn't about to let anyone destroy it. "Your sister came to me," Chike said, his voice gaining confidence as he buttoned his shirt. "She said you were cold, distant, always working, never here for your family." Nkem stretched languidly on the bed, her 25-year-old body a stark contrast to Amara's 32-year-old frame. He needed someone who could appreciate him, Amara. Someone who wasn't always buried in contracts and construction sites. The emotional manipulation was masterful, Amara realized. They'd planned this confrontation, wanted her to find them. But why? How long? Amara asked, her business mind already calculating planning. 6 months, Nkem replied with a cruel smile. "Right after you missed his birthday for that Abuja deal." 6 months. While Amara had been building their future, securing properties across Lagos and Abuja, her husband had been systematically destroying their marriage with her own sister. The cheating spouse narrative was classic, but the family betrayal added a layer of poison that made her stomach churn. Chike stepped forward, and for a moment something flickered in his eyes. Not love, but something harder. "I want a divorce, Amara. I want half of everything." The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about infidelity in marriage. This was a carefully orchestrated takedown. Her sister, who had always been jealous of Amara's success, had found the perfect weapon in Chike's greed. "Half." Amara laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You think because you helped pay my father's debts, you're entitled to the empire I built with my own hands?" "I'm your husband," Chike said, his hunter's instinct sharpening. "Nigerian law." "Nigerian law," Amara interrupted, "requires proof that you contributed to the marriage assets. Good luck proving that when every property, every deal, every contract has my name on it." But even as she spoke with confidence, Amara felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. She had loved this man, trusted him with her heart and her secrets. The public disgrace would be devastating. Lagos society thrived on gossip, and news of her marital collapse would spread like wildfire through the business community. Nkem rose from the bed, wrapping a sheet around herself with theatrical flair. "Sister, you always thought you were so much better than the rest of us. Look at you now, a successful businesswoman who couldn't even keep her man satisfied." The words hit their mark, but Amara's face remained impassive. Years of negotiating with ruthless developers had taught her to never show weakness, even when her world was crumbling. "Pack your things," she said quietly. "Both of you. You have 1 hour." Chike's expression darkened. "This is my home too." "Check the deed," Amara replied. "My name, my money, my home." As she turned to leave, Nkem's voice followed her. "You know, sister, Chike told me some very interesting things about your business partners. Apparently, you're not the only one with secrets." Amara froze. Her husband knew about the offshore accounts, the questionable partnerships that had helped her fast-track certain developments. Information that could destroy her if it fell into the wrong hands. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was war. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The Lagos traffic was its usual nightmare, but Amara barely noticed as her driver navigated through the chaos of Victoria Island. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop since she'd left the penthouse, but she couldn't bring herself to look at the messages. Word traveled fast in their circle, and she knew the whispers had already begun. "Madam, where to?" her driver, Emeka, asked gently. He'd been with her for 5 years and had witnessed both her meteoric rise and now, apparently, her spectacular fall. "The office," she said, "then change your mind." "No. Take me to my mother's house in Surulere." She needed to warn her family before Chike and Nkem spun their version of events. The thought of facing her mother, Mama Ngozi, filled her with dread. The woman who had blessed the marriage, who had been so grateful to Chike for saving them from poverty, would be devastated. The modest 2-bedroom house in Surulere felt smaller than ever as Amara sat across from her mother in the tiny living room. Family photos covered every surface. Her graduation from university, her first property deal, her wedding day. That last one now felt like a mockery. "Mama, I need to tell you something about Chike," Amara began carefully. Before she could continue, her phone rang. Chike's name flashed on the screen, and something in her mother's expression shifted. "You should answer," Mama Ngozi said quietly. A wife should always listen to her husband. The traditional values that had once comforted Amara now felt like chains. She declined the call, but immediately it rang again. "Mama, Chike has been unfaithful." With Nkem. Her mother's face crumpled, but not with the shock Amara expected. Instead, there was something that looked almost like resignation. "I know," Mama Ngozi whispered. The words hit Amara like a physical blow. "You knew. Nkem came to me last week. She was crying, said she was pregnant." Her mother's hands trembled as she spoke. "She said Chike promised to leave you, that he never loved you anyway, that you were just convenient. Pregnant." The word echoed in Amara's mind as the full scope of the betrayal became clear. This wasn't just about emotional manipulation or financial revenge. There was a child involved now. Co-parenting conflict would tie her to these people for life. "And you said nothing to me?" Amara's voice was barely controlled. "She begged me not to. Said she would handle it herself, that she just needed time to figure things out." Mama Ngozi looked up with tear-filled eyes. I hoped she would come to her senses." Amara's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. She glanced at it and felt her blood turn to ice. "Nice office you have on Amada Bello Way. Be there in an hour, or tomorrow's newspapers will have some very interesting stories about your business practices." A friend. Someone was watching her. Someone knew about her questionable partnerships, the shortcuts she'd taken to build her empire. The inner conflict was tearing her apart. She'd worked so hard to lift her family out of poverty, but had she compromised too much in the process? "Mama, I have to go," she said, standing abruptly. "Amara, please. Don't let pride destroy your marriage. Nkem is young, foolish. Chike is a good man who made a mistake." The word stung because part of her wondered if her mother was right. Had her ambition driven her husband into another woman's arms? But then she remembered Nkem's cruel laughter, Chike's calculated coldness, and her resolve hardened. "A good man doesn't betray his wife with her sister," Amara said firmly. "And a good sister doesn't seduce her sister's husband." As she left her mother's house, Amara's mind raced. The anonymous threat meant someone was coordinating this attack on multiple fronts. Her marriage, her family relationships, and now her business. Everything was under assault simultaneously. Her phone rang again. This time it was her lawyer, Barrister Adebayo. "Amara, we have a problem." His voice was tense. "Chike just filed for divorce, and he's claiming spousal abuse and alienation of affection. He's asking for half of everything, including the new Lekki development. That's impossible. He has no legal standing. He has witnesses, Amara. People saying you threatened him, that you've been emotionally abusive throughout the marriage. And there's something else." His voice trailed off. "What?" "He's claiming the marriage was never properly consummated due to your unnatural focus on business over family. It's a character assassination designed to make you look like an unfit wife in court. The legal system that was supposed to protect her was being weaponized against her. In Nigeria's traditional society, a woman who chose career over family was already fighting an uphill battle for respect. Now that perception was being used to destroy her. "I'm on my way to the office," she said. "We need to discuss strategy." But as she hung up, another text arrived from the unknown number. "Check your email. You have 30 minutes to decide. Choose wisely." Her hands shook as she opened her email on her phone. The message contained a single attachment, a photo of her shaking hands with Marcus Chun, a Chinese investor whose money had funded her most profitable deals. Money that had come through questionable channels, bypassing several regulatory requirements. The caption read, "Funny how success can disappear overnight. Withdraw the divorce proceedings, give Chaik what he wants, or face the consequences." Someone had been planning this for months, maybe years. They knew about her business dealings, her family dynamics, her vulnerabilities. This wasn't just domestic betrayal. This was a sophisticated takedown orchestrated by someone with resources and patience. As her car pulled into the parking garage of her office building, Amara realized she was fighting for more than her marriage or her money. She was fighting for her survival. But she had survived worse odds before. What shocking revelation awaits Amara at her office? Hit that notification bell to find out. The elevator to Amara's 23rd floor office felt like it was moving in slow motion. Each floor that passed gave her more time to think, to plan, to prepare for whatever ambush awaited her. The familiar ding of her private floor should have been comforting, but today it sounded ominous. Her assistant, Folake, looked up with worried eyes as Amara strode through the reception area. "Ma, there's someone waiting in your office," he said. "I know," Amara cut her off. "Hold all my calls." She pushed open the door to find a man she'd never seen before sitting behind her own desk, casually leafing through her confidential files. He was perhaps 40, impeccably dressed in a tailored Armani suit, with a kind of quiet confidence that came from wielding serious power. "Mrs. Emeka," he said without looking up, his accent revealing expensive British education layered over Yoruba roots. Or should I say, soon-to-be former Mrs. Emeka? "Who are you, and what are you doing in my office?" He finally looked up, and his smile was razor-sharp. "My name is Kemi Adelik. I represent certain interests that have been very impressed with your husband's business acumen." The name hit her like a thunderbolt. Kemi Adelik, the shadow puppet master behind half of Lagos's underground economy. Real estate, shipping, politics. If there was money and power involved, Adelik's fingerprints were on it. But he was also known for his brutality toward those who crossed him. "You see," Adelik continued, rising from her chair with predatory grace, "your husband isn't quite the simple hunter your family believes him to be. Chaik Emeka controls more territory in this city than you could imagine." The only problem was his inconvenient attachment to domestic bliss. The pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place, but the picture they revealed was terrifying. "You orchestrated this entire thing. The affair with my sister, the divorce, the threats." "Orchestrated is such a harsh word," Adelik said, moving to the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Lagos' skyline. "I simply encouraged certain natural tendencies. Your sister's jealousy, your husband's growing frustration with playing house when he could be expanding his empire." Amara felt sick. The emotional manipulation had been even deeper than she'd realized. Her marriage had been destroyed not by passion or even greed, but by cold business calculation. "Nkem's pregnancy?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "A useful fiction. Though I'm sure your husband would be happy to make it reality if it serves our purposes." His casual cruelty was breathtaking. "The point is, Mrs. Emeka, that your husband needs to be free to focus on business. Your domestic arrangements have become an impediment. And if I refuse to give him what he wants in the divorce? Adelik turned from the window, and his expression had shifted to something genuinely dangerous. Then tomorrow's headlines will reveal some very interesting details about how you financed your meteoric rise. Regulatory violations, money laundering, connections to some rather unsavory characters in Beijing and Dubai. He was right, and they both knew it. The shortcuts she'd taken, the corners she'd cut to build her empire. They would all come out in a coordinated media blitz that would destroy her reputation and probably land her in prison. However, Adelik continued, his tone becoming almost friendly, there is an alternative. I'm listening. Join us. Your real estate empire, combined with your husband's other interests, could be quite profitable for everyone involved. You keep your assets, your reputation remains intact, and we all prosper together. It was a devil's bargain. Align herself with the same criminals who had destroyed her marriage, or lose everything she'd worked for. The inner conflict was tearing her apart. Every instinct screamed at her to fight, but the rational part of her mind calculated the odds and found them wanting. Her phone buzzed. A text from Chaik. 1 hour, then I release everything. Choose. I need time to think, she said. Adelik checked his expensive watch. You have 30 minutes. I'll be downstairs in the parking garage. As he moved toward the door, he paused. Oh, and Mrs. Emeka? Your sister sends her regards. She's quite excited about her new life as Mrs. Chaik Emeka. The traditional ceremony is planned for next month in Enugu. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Amara alone with the wreckage of her life. Not only was she losing her husband to her sister, but they were planning to humiliate her further with a public traditional marriage ceremony. The African marriage drama would play out in front of their entire extended family and social circle. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. Uncle Taiwo? It's Amara. I need your help. Taiwo Bakare had been her father's friend and business partner before everything fell apart. More importantly, he had connections that ran deep into Nigeria's political and security establishment. If anyone could help her navigate this minefield, it was him. Amara, child. I heard about the troubles at home. What do you need? Information. About Chaik Emeka and his real business interests. There was a long pause. That's a dangerous road, my dear. Some stones are better left unturned. They're going to destroy me, uncle. I have to fight back. Another pause, then a sigh. Meet me at the usual place in 2 hours. And Amara? Come alone. As she hung up, her assistant's voice came through the intercom. Ma, there's a lady here to see you. Says she's your sister. Nkem walked in wearing a designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary and a smile that could cut glass. Her belly showed the slightest hint of a curve. Either she really was pregnant or she was an accomplished actress. Hello, sister, Nkem purred. I thought we should talk. The public disgrace was about to get worse. Amara could see it in her sister's eyes. Nkem hadn't come to gloat. She'd come to deliver another blow. Chaik sent me to give you one last chance, Nkem said, settling into the chair Adelik had just vacated. Sign the divorce papers, give him half of everything, and disappear quietly. No one wants to destroy you completely. And if I don't, Nkem's smile widened. Then tomorrow, the whole world learns that the great Amara Okafor built her empire with blood money. Your Chinese investors, your Dubai partners, they're all connected to arms dealers and human traffickers. Did you really think you could play in those waters and stay clean? The betrayal ran deeper than she'd imagined. Not only had her husband and sister destroyed her marriage, but they'd been documenting her questionable business practices the entire time, building a case that would obliterate her reputation and her freedom. 25 minutes, Nkem said, checking her phone. Then everyone knows everything. As her sister left, Amara realized she was trapped in a perfect storm of domestic betrayal, business corruption, and family manipulation. But she hadn't survived this long by giving up when the odds were against her. She picked up her phone and made one more call. Barrister Adebayo, I need you to prepare something for me, and I need it done in 20 minutes. What crazy plan does Amara have? Comment your thoughts on the betrayal, and don't forget to share this with someone who loves drama. The parking garage beneath Amara's office building felt like a tomb as she descended to meet Adelik. Each step echoed off the concrete walls, matching the pounding of her heart. In her hand, she clutched a manila envelope, either her salvation or her final act of defiance. Adelik stood beside a black Mercedes S-Class, smoking a cigarette with the casual air of a man who owned the world. 2 bodyguards flanked him, their bulk barely contained by expensive suits. "Mrs. Emeka," he said, crushing the cigarette under his Italian leather shoe. "I trust you've made the sensible choice." "I have an alternative proposal," Amara said, holding up the envelope. "One that I think will interest you more than a simple divorce settlement." His eyebrow arched with amusement. "Really? You're in no position to negotiate." "That's where you're wrong." She opened the envelope and pulled out a thick stack of documents. "These are copies of every transaction, every deal, every offshore account that my husband has been involved with over the past 3 years. Adelik's expression didn't change, but she caught the slight stiffening of his bodyguards. She was in dangerous territory now. "You see," Amara continued, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest, while Chaik thought he was playing the devoted husband, I was playing the devoted wife. I knew something was wrong when a simple hunter could afford to pay off my father's debts overnight. So I did what any smart businesswoman would do. I investigated. "Careful, Mrs. Emeka." Adelik's voice carried a warning. "Some knowledge is too expensive to possess. Bank records from 7 different countries. Shell companies in Panama and Dubai. Shipping manifests that don't match customs declarations. And most interesting of all," she pulled out a photograph. "Pictures of my dear husband meeting with known arms dealers in Cotonou." The photograph showed Chaik shaking hands with a man Amara had spent considerable money to identify. Viktor Kozlov, a Russian arms dealer with connections throughout West Africa. The meeting had taken place 6 months ago, right around the time Chaik had begun his affair with Nkem. "Your husband will not be pleased that you've been spying on him," Adelik said, but there was something new in his voice, respect mixed with caution. "My husband made the mistake of underestimating me," Amara replied, "just like you did." She had spent the last hour not cowering in her office, but calling in favors from Uncle Taiwo's network. The old man's connections had come through with information that painted a very different picture of the power dynamics at play. "Here's what I know," she continued. "Chaik isn't your partner. He's your competitor. He's been using my legitimate business as a front to launder money from his arms dealing operation. Money that should have been going through your channels." Adelik's mask finally slipped, revealing genuine surprise. "Continue." "The divorce was his idea, not yours. He wanted to take half my assets so he could expand his operation without your oversight. The affair with my sister was just convenient cover for the real betrayal. He's been preparing to break away from your organization." The parking garage fell silent except for the hum of ventilation fans. Amara could see the wheels turning in Adelik's mind as he processed this new information. The cheating spouse narrative had been hiding a much more dangerous game of betrayal within the criminal underworld. "Even if what you're saying is true," Adelik said slowly, "what makes you think I would trust you over him?" "Because I have something you need." Amara pulled out one final document. The location of Chaik's private warehouse in Apapa Port. The one where he's been storing weapons shipments without your knowledge. This time, Adelik's composure cracked completely. The warehouse represented millions of dollars in contraband weapons, hidden assets that could destabilize the delicate balance of power in Lagos's underworld. If Chaik was operating independently, it meant he was planning something big. "You expect me to believe you would betray your own husband." "My husband betrayed me first," Amara said, her voice hard as steel. "With my sister, with his business, with everything we built together. Now, I'm simply returning the favor." Her phone buzzed. A text from Chaik. "Time's up. Hope you made the right choice." "Actually," Amara said, showing Adelik the message, "time's up for him." She pulled out her phone and made a call. "Uncle Taiwo? It's time." Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air. Through the garage's entrance, they could see police vehicles and EFCC anti-corruption agents surrounding the building. "What have you done?" Adelik demanded, his hand moving toward his jacket. "I made a deal with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission," Amara said calmly. "Full cooperation in exchange for immunity." They've been watching Chaik for months, waiting for the right moment to move. The betrayal was complete, but not in the way anyone had expected. While her husband and sister had been plotting her downfall, Amara had been orchestrating theirs. The domestic betrayal had become a criminal conspiracy, and she had chosen survival over loyalty. "You're making a mistake," Adelik said, backing toward his car. "This won't end here." "Maybe not," Amara agreed. "But it ends today for Chaik." As Adelik's Mercedes roared out of the garage, Amara's phone rang. The caller ID showed Chaik's name, but when she answered, she heard her sister's panicked voice. "Amara, they're arresting everyone. Chaik, the bodyguards, even some people I don't know. What did you do?" The satisfaction in Amara's voice was unmistakable. "I chose myself over a cheating husband and a backstabbing sister. Enjoy explaining to Mama why you're dating an arms dealer." But even as she savored this moment of revenge, Amara knew the real battle was just beginning. Adelik wouldn't forget this betrayal, and neither would the other players in Lagos's shadowy underworld. She had won this round, but the war for her survival was far from over. The elevator doors opened, and Uncle Taiwo stepped out with 2 EFCC agents. "Are you ready to give your statement, my dear?" he asked gently. As they walked toward the exit, Amara caught sight of herself in the building's mirrored walls. The woman looking back at her was no longer the trusting wife who had walked in on her husband's betrayal. This was someone harder, more dangerous, more willing to fight fire with fire. "Actually, Uncle," she said, "I think I'm just getting started." But unknown to her, in a black SUV across the street, someone was photographing every person entering and leaving the building. The real power behind Lagos's underworld had been watching, waiting, and planning their next move. Is Amara's revenge complete, or has she just made herself an even bigger target? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more twists. 3 weeks later, Amara stood in the witness box of Lagos High Court, her hand steady as she swore to tell the truth. The courtroom was packed with journalists, curious onlookers, and representatives from various government agencies. The case had become a sensation, the successful businesswoman who had exposed her own husband's criminal empire. Chaik sat at the defendant's table in prison-issued clothing, his once confident demeanor replaced by barely contained rage. Every time their eyes met, she could see the promise of retribution burning in his gaze. Nkem was notably absent. She had fled to London the day after the arrests, claiming diplomatic immunity through a boyfriend at the British High Commission. "Mrs. Emeka," the prosecutor began, "can you tell the court when you first became aware of your husband's illegal activities?" The question she had prepared for hung in the air. The truth was complicated. She had suspected something from the beginning, but had chosen to look the other way as long as it didn't affect her business. Now, survival demanded a different version of events. "I noticed inconsistencies in his financial statements about 6 months ago," she said, her voice clear and confident. "Large cash deposits that didn't match his claimed income as a hunting guide. When I questioned him, he became evasive and aggressive. It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either." The inner conflict tore at her. To save herself, she was painting herself as a naive wife rather than the calculating businesswoman who had willingly entered into gray area deals when they benefited her. "Did you attempt to investigate these inconsistencies?" "I hired a private investigator initially, but when I discovered the scope of the illegal activities, I contacted the authorities immediately." Another half-truth. She had only contacted the authorities after Chaik's betrayal with Nkem, not out of civic duty, but out of revenge. The emotional manipulation that had destroyed her marriage was now being used as evidence of her moral awakening. During cross-examination, Chaik's lawyer, a sharp woman named Barrister Okonkwo, went straight for the throat. "Mrs. Emeka, isn't it true that you benefited significantly from your husband's illegal activities? Your real estate empire expanded dramatically after your marriage." My business growth came from legitimate deals with verified investors, Amara replied calmly, including the Lekki Gardens project, which was funded by Mr. Marcus Chun, a man who, according to our investigation, has connections to money laundering operations in 3 countries. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. This was the weakness in her case, her own questionable business practices. But her lawyer had prepared her for this line of attack. I conducted due diligence on all my investors through reputable international firms, she said. If Mr. Chun misrepresented his background, then I was as much a victim as anyone else. It was a deflection, but a necessary one. The prosecution had granted her immunity in exchange for cooperation, but that protection only extended to her husband's crimes, not her own potential violations. As she left the witness box, Amara caught sight of a familiar figure in the gallery, Kemi Adelik, impeccably dressed and watching the proceedings with the detached interest of a predator studying prey. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and his slight nod was both acknowledgement and warning. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed her with questions. Mrs. Emeka, do you regret exposing your husband? Are you concerned about retaliation from his criminal associates? What's next for your business empire? Her prepared statement was brief and dignified, but inside, she was calculating her next moves. The court case was just one front in a larger war, and winning here didn't guarantee her ultimate survival. That evening, she sat in her office reviewing security reports from the private firms she'd hired to protect her properties and personnel. The threats had been escalating: vandalism at construction sites, anonymous phone calls, suspicious individuals photographing her buildings. Her phone rang. An international number she didn't recognize. Hello, sister. Nkem's voice was strained, fearful. What do you want? Amara asked coldly. I'm in trouble. Big trouble. The people Chike was working with, they think I know things. They found me in London. Despite everything, a stab of concern pierced Amara's heart. Nkem was still her sister, still family, regardless of the betrayal. What kind of trouble? They want me to come back, to testify that you were involved in everything from the beginning. They're offering money, protection for the baby. Nkem's voice broke. I'm really pregnant, Amara. It wasn't fake. The revelation hit like a physical blow. There really was a child involved now, an innocent life caught in the crossfire of adult betrayals and criminal conspiracies. The co-parenting conflict was about to become infinitely more complicated. Where are you exactly? Amara asked. Safe house in East London. But they found my last location. I don't think I can keep running. Amara closed her eyes, weighing her options. Saving Kem could expose her to additional danger, but abandoning her pregnant sister would cross a moral line she wasn't sure she could live with. Listen carefully, she said finally. There's a Nigerian lawyer in London named Bayo Adeniran. Call him. Tell him you're my sister and that you need immediate asylum protection. I'll wire money to cover his fees. Why would you help me after what I did? The question hung in the air for a long moment. Why was she helping the woman who had destroyed her marriage? Because the baby didn't choose this, Amara said finally. And despite everything, you're still my sister. But even as she spoke the words, another part of her mind was calculating the strategic value of keeping Kem alive and protected. A living witness who could contradict any testimony forced out of her under duress was valuable insurance. After she hung up, Amara poured herself a glass of wine and stared out at the Lagos skyline. The city that had made her fortune was becoming increasingly dangerous for her. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every business associate could be a potential threat. Her secure phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Taiwo. Emergency meeting. Now, the usual place. The usual place was a small restaurant in Maryland, owned by a woman who owed Uncle Taiwo several favors and guaranteed absolute privacy. When Amara arrived, she found him sitting with a man she didn't recognize, middle-aged, unremarkable, with a kind of face that disappeared in a crowd. This is Mr. Johnson, Uncle Taiwo said, without preamble. He works for people who are very interested in your situation. What people? Amara asked warily. The kind who clean up messes that local authorities can't handle. Johnson replied in accented English. We understand you've made some powerful enemies. I exposed criminals. That's what any citizen should do. Johnson smiled thinly. Mrs. Emeka, let's not pretend this was about civic duty. You discovered your husband was planning to leave you and take half your assets. You struck first. Smart, but it's created complications. The blunt assessment was uncomfortable in its accuracy, but Amara kept her expression neutral. The arms dealing operation your husband was running connected to several international networks. Johnson continued. Networks that don't appreciate having their supply chains disrupted by domestic disputes. What do you want from me? Cooperation. Your husband was small-time compared to the real players, but he was useful. With him out of the picture, there's an opportunity for someone with your business acumen and legitimate front companies to step into a more substantial role. It was another devil's bargain, but this one came with international implications. The domestic betrayal that had started with her husband's infidelity was spiraling into something that could affect weapons supplies across West Africa. I'll need time to consider, she said. Of course. But don't take too long. Nature abhors a vacuum, and your husband's former territories won't stay empty forever. As they left the restaurant, Uncle Taiwo pulled her aside. These people don't make offers twice, my dear. Whatever you decide, decide quickly. That night, alone in her penthouse, Amara realized that exposing Chike hadn't ended her problems. It had simply attracted bigger, more dangerous players to the game. The public disgrace of her failed marriage was nothing compared to the shadow war now brewing around her. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Your sister's London safe house isn't as safe as you think. You have 48 hours to make the right choice. Attached was a photograph of Nkem walking out of a grocery store, clearly taken just hours earlier. The war was escalating, and now her pregnant sister was a pawn in a game much larger than domestic betrayal. Will Amara save her sister or protect herself? Hit that subscribe button to find out what happens next. The British Airways flight from Lagos to London felt like the longest 7 hours of Amara's life. She had made her choice. Family over self-preservation, at least for now. The photograph of Nkem had made it clear that her sister's life hung in the balance, and despite the betrayal, Amara couldn't live with that blood on her hands. Beside her in first class sat 2 members of her new security team, former military operatives Uncle Taiwo had recommended. Their presence was both comforting and terrifying, a reminder that her life had become something requiring armed protection. Ma'am, one of them, a quiet Igbo man named Akwu, leaned over as they began their descent into Heathrow. Our London contact says there's been movement around your sister's location. We need to move fast. Amara nodded, checking her phone for the 100th time. No word from Nkem in 12 hours, which could mean anything from deliberate silence to something much worse. The safe house in East London turned out to be a modest flat above a Nigerian restaurant, the kind of place that served as an unofficial embassy for immigrants and refugees. Bayo Adeniran, the lawyer she'd contacted, met them at the door with a grim expression. She's alive, he said without preamble. But they took her this morning. Professional job, no violence, just 3 men in suits who showed identification claiming to be from immigration services. Fake IDs? Amara asked. Almost certainly, but convincing enough that the building's security didn't interfere. The infidelity in marriage that had started this nightmare was now threatening to cost her sister's life. Amara felt the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. Her choice to marry Chike for her family's financial security, her willingness to overlook his suspicious activities, her decision to expose him when betrayed. Do we know who took her? Akwu asked, his hand instinctively moving toward his concealed weapon. My sources suggest it's connected to the Kozlov organization, Adeniran replied. The same Russian arms dealers your husband was working with. They want leverage over your testimony. Amara's phone rang. An international number with a Moscow country code. Mrs. Emeka, a heavily accented voice began. I trust your flight was comfortable? Where is my sister? Safe. For now. She is a lovely young woman, your sister. very concerned about her unborn child. It would be unfortunate if anything happened to either of them. The threat was crystal clear, and the casual cruelty in the man's voice made her blood run cold. This was what happened when domestic betrayal intersected with international criminal networks. What do you want? Simple. You will return to Lagos and recant your testimony against your husband. You will tell the court that you fabricated evidence out of spite over his infidelity. The charges will be dropped, your husband will be released, and business can return to normal. And if I refuse, then your sister will discover how dangerous London can be for young Nigerian women. Accidents happen. Pregnancies end tragically. These things occur. The line went dead, leaving Amara staring at her phone with shaking hands. The emotional manipulation was perfect. They had found the one weakness in her armor, the one person she couldn't abandon despite the betrayal. We need to find her, she told Akwu. Ma'am, with respect, these people are professionals. If they don't want us to find her, we won't. We need to think strategically. But strategy felt impossible when family was at stake. The traditional values her mother had instilled in her, loyalty to family above all else, warred with her survival instincts. Her phone buzzed with a text from Johnson, the mysterious American she'd met in Lagos. Heard about your London problem. There might be another way. Meet me at Claridge's Hotel, 8 p.m. Against Akwu's advice, Amara went to the meeting. The hotel's elegant bar felt surreal after the grimy safehouse and kidnapping threats. Johnson sat in a corner booth, perfectly at ease in his expensive suit. Mrs. Emeka, he greeted her, you look stressed. They have my sister. I know. Victor Kozlov doesn't make idle threats. Your sister and her unborn child are in genuine danger. Can you help? Johnson sipped his whiskey thoughtfully. That depends. Are you ready to stop playing defense and start playing offense? What do you mean? Kozlov took your sister because he thinks you're a naive businesswoman who got in over her head. He's wrong. You're a survivor who's been making calculated moves from the beginning. It's time to show him exactly who he's dealing with. Johnson pulled out a tablet and showed her a series of photographs, shipping manifests, bank transfers, encrypted communications. We've been tracking Kozlov's operations for years. Your husband was small-time, but he connected us to something much bigger. Kozlov has been using legitimate businesses across West Africa to launder money from arms sales to terrorist groups. The scope was staggering. Her domestic betrayal had uncovered a network that stretched from Lagos to Syria, funding conflicts across multiple continents. Here's what's going to happen, Johnson continued. You're going to call Kozlov back and agree to his terms. You'll return to Lagos and recant your testimony. But first, you're going to give us everything, every detail about your husband's operations, every contact, every account number. That won't save Nkem. No, but what happens next will. His smile was predatory. 6 hours after you recant your testimony, every major law enforcement agency in Europe will simultaneously raid Kozlov's operations. His entire network will collapse overnight. It was a complex revenge plot that would use her apparent capitulation as cover for a much larger takedown. But the risks were enormous. If anything went wrong, both she and Nkem would pay the ultimate price. What guarantee do I have that you'll protect my sister? None, Johnson admitted. But you have something better, the knowledge that we need Kozlov's network intact until the moment we strike. Killing your sister prematurely would alert him that something was wrong. The calculation was cold but logical. She was being asked to trust strangers with her sister's life while pretending to betray her own testimony. The co-parenting conflict that would inevitably arise if Nkem survived would be the least of her problems. There's something else, Johnson added. Your husband has been talking in prison. He's offering to provide information about other criminal organizations in exchange for a reduced sentence. If we don't move now, we'll lose the opportunity to take down the entire network. Another betrayal, but this time it might work in her favor. Chaik's willingness to turn on his criminal associates showed that loyalty was a luxury none of them could afford. I'll need proof that my sister is alive before I do anything, Amara said. Johnson made a phone call in a language she didn't recognize. Within minutes, her phone rang with a video call from Kem. Amara, her sister's voice was panicked but strong. "I'm okay, the baby's okay, but these people..." The call cut off, but it was enough. Kem was alive, and for now, that had to be sufficient. 12 hours, Johnson said. "That's how long from when you make the call until the raids begin. Can you hold your nerve that long?" Amara thought about her journey from the slums of Mushin to the penthouse in Victoria Island, about every compromise and calculation that had brought her to this moment. She had survived poverty, betrayal, and criminal conspiracies. She could survive 12 more hours. "Yes," she said, "I can." But as she left Claridge's hotel, she wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life, or the smartest move in a game where the stakes kept getting higher. Unknown to her, in a van across the street, someone was photographing every person entering and leaving the hotel. The real power players were still moving their pieces across the board, and Amara was about to discover that even her new allies had secrets that could destroy her. What deadly game is Amara really playing? Comment below and share this with someone who needs to see how this ends. The return flight to Lagos felt like a march to the gallows. Amara sat rigid in her first-class seat, every muscle tense, as she rehearsed the lies she would have to tell in court. Recanting her testimony would destroy her credibility and potentially expose her to perjury charges. But Nkem's life hung in the balance. Beside her, Akwu reviewed security protocols for what felt like the 100th time. "Ma'am, once you make that statement in court, every criminal organization in Lagos will know you can be pressured. The target on your back will be permanent." She understood the implications, but the choice had been made the moment she saw the fear in Kem's eyes during that brief video call. Family loyalty was both her strength and her weakness, and her enemies had identified it with surgical precision. The Lagos skyline came into view as they descended, the familiar chaos of Victoria Island and Ikoyi spread out below. Somewhere in that urban maze, Chike sat in prison, probably believing his plan had worked perfectly. He had orchestrated her downfall, using her own sister as a weapon, and now he was about to be vindicated by her public humiliation. At Murtala Muhammad Airport, a crowd of reporters waited despite the late hour. Word of her sudden trip to London had leaked, and speculation about its purpose was already spreading across social media. Mrs. Emeka, a reporter from Channels TV, pushed forward with her microphone. "Are you planning to change your testimony against your husband? Can you confirm reports that your sister has been threatened? Is it true you've been in contact with international criminal organizations?" Amara pushed through the crowd without comment, but she could see the doubt in their eyes. The narrative was shifting, from brave whistleblower exposing her criminal husband to unreliable woman possibly fabricating evidence out of spite. The emotional manipulation was working exactly as intended. Her phone buzzed with a message from Johnson. "Package delivered. Clock starts ticking when you enter that courtroom." The package was a secure communication device that would allow her to coordinate with the International Task Force during the 12-hour window between her recantation and the coordinated raids. If everything went according to plan, Chike would be free for less than half a day before being arrested again on much more serious charges. That night, unable to sleep, Amara stood on her penthouse balcony overlooking Lagos Harbor. The city never slept, its lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. Somewhere out there, Adelik was probably planning his next move, uncertain whether her apparent capitulation was genuine or another calculated deception. Her secure phone rang. Uncle Taiwo's voice was gravelly with exhaustion. "My dear, are you certain about this course of action? Once you recant in court, there's no going back. Nkem is pregnant, Uncle. I can't let them hurt an innocent child because of my choices. And if this American's plan fails? If the raids don't happen as promised?" It was the question that had been haunting her since leaving London. Johnson's people were competent, but criminal networks like Kozlov's had survived decades by being prepared for betrayal. If even one element of the plan failed, both she and Nkem would pay with their lives. "Then I'll face the consequences," she said simply. "But I won't abandon my sister." The next morning, the Lagos High Court was packed beyond capacity. Word of her planned recantation had spread, drawing curious onlookers, journalists, and various interested parties who wanted to witness the spectacular fall of one of Lagos's most successful businesswomen. Chike sat at the defendant's table with barely contained triumph written across his face. His lawyer, Barrister Okonkwo, practically glowed with confidence. They believed they had won, that the cheating spouse had finally broken his victim's resolve. "Your Honor," Amara began, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her chest, "I need to correct certain statements I made in my previous testimony." The courtroom erupted in whispers and gasps. The prosecutor looked stunned, while Chike's legal team exchanged satisfied glances. "Mrs. Emeka," the judge said sternly, "are you saying you provided false testimony to this court?" The moment of truth. The words that would either save her sister or doom them both. "Yes, Your Honor. My accusations against my husband were exaggerated. I was angry about his infidelity with my sister, and I allowed that anger to cloud my judgment." It felt like swallowing poison, but she forced herself to continue. "The evidence I provided was taken out of context. Business dealings that appeared suspicious were actually legitimate, documented through proper channels." Each word was a betrayal of everything she had fought for, but she could see the satisfaction in Chike's eyes and knew that Nkem's life was worth this humiliation. The prosecutor requested a recess to consider the implications of her testimony. As the court emptied, Chike approached her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you for finally telling the truth, my dear wife," he said softly. "I hope this means we can put this unfortunate episode behind us." "Where's Nkem?" she asked quietly. "Safe. She'll be returned to Lagos once all charges are officially dropped. We can be a family again, you, me, and my child." The possessive way he said "my child" made her skin crawl. Even in victory, he was still manipulating, still controlling. The co-parenting conflict would be a nightmare if he truly believed he could resume their marriage after everything that had happened. "I want a divorce," she said firmly. "Clean, simple, no contested assets." His expression darkened. "We'll see about that. You've caused me considerable trouble, Amara. Trust takes time to rebuild." As he walked away, surrounded by his legal team and celebrating supporters, Amara checked her secure phone. A message from Johnson. "Phase 1 complete. Extraction team in position. Hold tight." The next 8 hours were the longest of her life. She returned to her office and tried to maintain normal business operations while her entire world hung in the balance. Every phone call could bring news of the raids beginning, or of Nkem's death if something had gone wrong. At precisely 3:47 p.m., her regular phone exploded with notifications. News alerts, social media updates, calls from reporters, all reporting simultaneous law enforcement operations across 3 continents. Breaking. International arms trafficking network dismantled in coordinated raids. Russian crime boss Viktor Kozlov arrested in London raid. West African weapons pipeline shut down by Joint Task Force. Her secure phone rang immediately. Johnson's voice was crisp, professional. Package 1 retrieved safely. Package 2 being processed through diplomatic channels. Recommend you maintain low profile for the next 48 hours. Package 1 was Nkem, safe and free. Package 2 was probably Kozlov himself, being transferred to a facility where he couldn't threaten anyone ever again. But even as relief flooded through her, Amara knew this victory came with a price. Her public recantation had damaged her reputation, possibly permanently. The business relationships she had spent years building might not survive the perception that she was either a liar or easily manipulated. Her office intercom buzzed. "Ma'am, there's someone here to see you. Says his name is Mr. Adelik." Kemi Adelik entered her office with the same predatory confidence as before, but there was something different in his eyes. Respect mixed with wariness. "Mrs. Emeka," he said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "What an interesting day this has been." "I don't know what you mean." "Please. We both know you didn't suddenly develop a conscience about lying in court. The question is, what was your real game?" The moment of truth had arrived. She could continue playing the manipulated wife, or she could show him exactly who he was dealing with. My real game, she said slowly, was protecting my family while removing threats to my business. Kozlov is gone, my husband will be rearrested within hours on international charges, and my sister is safe. His smile was genuinely appreciative. And what about me? Do you consider me a threat to your business? That depends. Are you planning to interfere with my legitimate operations, or are you interested in a mutually beneficial relationship? The negotiation that followed would determine whether she spent the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, or whether she could build something approaching a normal existence from the ruins of her marriage. But first, she had a sister to welcome home and a nephew or niece to prepare for. Will Amara's gamble pay off, or has she just painted an even bigger target on her back? Like and subscribe for the shocking conclusion. 3 days later, Amara waited in the arrival hall of Murtala Muhammad Airport as passengers from the London flight began emerging. Her heart pounded with each face that wasn't Kem's, until finally she saw her sister pushing a wheelchair through the crowd, one hand protectively cradling her slightly rounded belly. The reunion was awkward, loaded with months of betrayal and manipulation, but when Kem collapsed into her arms sobbing, Amara felt something she hadn't expected. Forgiveness beginning to bloom alongside the lingering hurt. "I'm so sorry," Kem whispered against her shoulder. "For everything. For Chaik, for the lies, for being so jealous and stupid." "We'll talk about it later," Amara said gently, helping her sister into the waiting car. "Right now, you need rest and medical attention." As they drove through Lagos traffic toward the private clinic in Victoria Island, Nkem told her story in halting fragments. The seduction by Chaik had been deliberate, calculated. He had identified her jealousy of Amara's success and exploited it ruthlessly. "He told me you didn't deserve what you had," Nkem said, staring out at the familiar chaos of Lagos streets. "That you had gotten lucky while the rest of the family suffered. He made it sound like I was taking back what should have been ours all along." The emotional manipulation had been masterful, playing on family dynamics and sibling rivalry that stretched back to childhood. Chaik had studied them both, understanding exactly which buttons to push to destroy their relationship. "When did you realize you were pregnant?" Amara asked. 2 months ago. That's when everything changed." Nkem's voice was barely audible. "Suddenly Chaik wasn't interested in leaving you anymore. He said the baby gave us leverage, that we could force you to give him what he wanted without a messy divorce." The calculation was chilling, using an innocent child as a weapon in their domestic betrayal. It revealed a level of cruelty that made Amara grateful she had escaped the marriage before having children of her own. At the clinic, Dr. Adebayo confirmed that both Nkem and the baby were healthy despite the stress of recent weeks. The pregnancy was progressing normally. A girl due in 4 months. "What will you name her?" Amara asked as they settled into the penthouse guest room that would be Nkem's temporary home. "I was thinking, Chioma." "God is good." Nkem's smile was the first genuine expression Amara had seen from her in years. "After everything that happened, it feels like a miracle that we're both alive." The name choice was significant in Igbo culture, a declaration of gratitude and hope for the future. It suggested that Nkem was ready to move beyond the betrayals of the past. That evening, as Nkem slept, Amara received the call she had been expecting. Chaik had been rearrested at Kirikiri prison, this time on international terrorism charges that would likely keep him behind bars for decades. The arms dealing operation he had built was being dismantled piece by piece. But the legal victory felt hollow. Her reputation in Lagos society remained damaged by her recantation, and several business partners had quietly distanced themselves from her company. The public disgrace of her failed marriage continued to reverberate through her professional relationships. Her phone rang. Kemi Adelik's name appeared on the caller ID. "Mrs. Emeka." His voice was businesslike. "I have a proposition for you." They met the next morning at his office in Ikoyi, a sleek tower that housed legitimate businesses alongside less savory operations. Adelik's offer was straightforward, partnership rather than competition. Your husband's territory needs new management, he explained, gesturing to a map of Lagos marked with shipping routes and distribution points. You have the business acumen and legitimate front companies. I have the connections and operational expertise. It was a devil's bargain, but one that offered genuine protection and profitability. The alternative was continuing to operate independently while constantly watching for threats from rival organizations moving into the power vacuum left by Chaik's arrest. What would be my role? She asked carefully. Exactly what you've always done. Run legitimate businesses that happen to provide useful services for our other operations. Real estate development, shipping, logistics, financial services. All legal, all profitable, all protected. The offer was tempting, but Amara had learned to be suspicious of arrangements that seemed too convenient. What's the catch? No catch. Just reality. Your husband made enemies throughout Lagos's underworld. Some of them blame you for disrupting their operations. Others see opportunity in your apparent vulnerability. Either way, you need protection. As if summoned by his words, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Nice penthouse. Shame if something happened to it. And to your pregnant sister. The threat was clear and immediate. Despite Kozlov's arrest and Chaik's imprisonment, other players were moving into position to exploit what they saw as her weakness. I need guarantees, she said. My sister and her unborn child are off limits. Completely. Agreed. Family is sacred. Anyone who threatens them answers to me personally. The negotiation continued for 2 hours, covering everything from profit-sharing arrangements to operational boundaries. In the end, they reached an agreement that would legitimize Adelik's operations while providing Amara with protection and significantly increased revenue. But even as she signed the contracts that would reshape her business empire, Amara wondered if she was trading one form of imprisonment for another. The domestic betrayal that had started with a cheating spouse had led her inexorably into the heart of Lagos's criminal underworld. That night, she sat with Nkem on the penthouse balcony, watching the lights of Lagos twinkle in the distance. Her sister was knitting baby clothes, her face peaceful in a way Amara hadn't seen in years. Do you ever regret it? Nkem asked without looking up from her knitting. Everything that happened with Chaik? The marriage? The betrayal? Or destroying his criminal empire? All of it. Any of it. Amara considered the question seriously. The path that had led her here was littered with compromises and moral ambiguities, but it had also resulted in survival and, ultimately, a form of victory. I regret trusting the wrong people, she said finally, but I don't regret fighting for what was mine. What about the new partnership with Adelik? It was a perceptive question. Nkem might have been manipulated and betrayed, but she wasn't naive about the realities of Lagos business. Sometimes you have to choose between different kinds of danger, Amara replied. I'm choosing the one I can control. Her secure phone buzzed with a message from Johnson. Cleanup operations complete. Your slate is officially clean with international law enforcement. Congratulations on your new partnership. The message confirmed what she had suspected. Her alliance with Adelik had been tacitly approved by the same forces that had helped her destroy Kozlov's network. She was now part of a carefully managed ecosystem of controlled corruption, legitimate enough to avoid unwanted attention, but profitable enough to satisfy all parties involved. As Nkem retired for the night, Amara remained on the balcony, planning her next moves. The co-parenting conflict with Chaik would be resolved by his long imprisonment, but raising a child in this new reality would require careful navigation. Her phone rang one final time. Her mother's voice was tired but proud. Amara, I heard about Nkem coming home. Thank you for bringing her back safely. She's family, Mama. That's what we do for family. And Chaik? The marriage. The marriage is over. Permanently. But Nkem's baby will have everything she needs to succeed in this world. It was a promise she intended to keep, regardless of the cost or complexity involved. The infidelity in marriage that had destroyed her relationship with Chaik had ultimately led to something unexpected. A second chance at the sister bond she thought she had lost forever. But as she prepared for bed, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that the most dangerous challenges still lay ahead. Is this a new beginning or just the calm before the storm? Don't forget to hit that notification bell. 6 months later, Amara stood in the private maternity ward of Eco Hospital, holding her newborn niece for the first time. Chioma Okafor, the name carefully chosen to exclude any reference to her father, was perfect in the way that all babies are, but she also represented something more complex. A new generation born from betrayal, but raised in hope. The birth had been difficult. Nkem had gone into labor 3 weeks early during a thunderstorm that knocked out power across Victoria Island. Amara had called in every favor to ensure backup generators and the best medical team were available, but for several terrifying hours, she had feared losing both her sister and the baby. "She has your eyes," Nkem said weakly from the hospital bed, watching Amara cradle the infant. "Strong. Stubborn. She'll need that in this world." The observation was more prescient than either of them realized. Outside the hospital, Lagos was changing in ways that would affect every aspect of their lives. The power vacuum left by Chaik's imprisonment and Kozlov's arrest had been filled by new players, some of whom viewed Amara's alliance with Adelik as either an opportunity or a threat. Dr. Adebayo entered with the birth certificate paperwork. "Everything looks good," he said cheerfully. "Baby and mother are both healthy. Father's name?" "Leave it blank," Nkem said firmly. "This child has no father." It was a decision that would complicate future legal matters, but eliminate any claim Chaik might try to make from prison. The co-parenting conflict that Amara had feared was being preempted by simply erasing the father from the official record. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Amara noticed increased security around the building. Adelik had been true to his word about protecting her family, but the visible presence of armed guards was a reminder of how dramatically their lives had changed. "Auntie Amara," Nkem said as they settled into the bulletproof Mercedes that had replaced her old car, "I need to tell you something." The tone was serious, almost fearful. Amara felt her stomach tighten with familiar anxiety. "What is it?" "While I was in London, I wasn't completely honest about what happened. The people who took me, they didn't just threaten me. They made me record messages, videos where I said things about your business, about the people you work with now." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Even from prison, even with his network destroyed, Chaik was still finding ways to create problems for her. "What kind of messages?" "I don't know exactly. They drugged me before each recording session. But afterward, they would show me clips, me talking about money laundering, about bribes you allegedly paid to government officials, about your partnership with Adelik. It was a sophisticated insurance policy, compromising material that could be released if needed to discredit or pressure her." The emotional manipulation had extended even into Nkem's captivity. "Do you think they still have the recordings?" Amara asked. "I don't know. Johnson's people raided the facility where I was held. But..." Nkem's voice trailed off as baby Chioma began crying. The implication was clear. Somewhere in the digital ether, there might be fabricated evidence of criminal activities that could destroy everything Amara had built. The domestic betrayal that had started with infidelity now had the potential to evolve into a much more complex legal and reputational threat. Her secure phone buzzed with a message from Johnson. Package contents may have been copied before retrieval. Recommend heightened security protocols. The warning confirmed her worst fears. Despite all their careful planning and successful operations, loose ends remained that could unravel everything. That evening, as Nkem and baby Chioma settled into the nursery that had been prepared in the penthouse, Amara met with Adelik to discuss the new threat. Deepfake technology has made it possible to create convincing video evidence of almost anything, he explained, reviewing intelligence reports from his network. If Kozlov's people recorded your sister making statements, they could digitally manipulate them to say whatever they wanted. The implications were staggering. In an era where information warfare could be conducted with laptops and software, her reputation and freedom could be destroyed by pixels and algorithms. "What do we do about it?" she asked. "We prepare for a different kind of battle. Legal, reputational, political. The old methods of dealing with enemies won't work against digital ghosts. It was a sobering realization. The African marriage drama that had consumed her life for the past year was evolving into something that required new skills and allies. Her phone rang. An unknown international number that made her stomach clench with anxiety. Mrs. Emeka. The voice was mechanically distorted, probably using voice-changing software. I trust you remember our London conversations. It had to be connected to Kozlov's organization, someone who had escaped the raids and was now seeking revenge or profit. What do you want? Justice. Your lies destroyed good men, broke up profitable partnerships, caused considerable financial losses. Time to pay the price. Kozlov was an arms dealer selling weapons to terrorists. He deserved everything that happened to him. Perhaps. But what about the innocent people caught in your web of deception? Like your sister, for instance. The threat was clear but puzzling. What could they possibly gain by threatening Kem now, when she was home safe with her newborn daughter? I have something you'll want to see, the voice continued. Check your email. The video file that arrived showed Nkem in what appeared to be her London captivity, speaking clearly and coherently about Amara's criminal activities. But Amara could see the subtle signs of digital manipulation. Slight inconsistencies in lighting, unnatural eye movements, audio that didn't quite sync with lip movements. Impressive, isn't it? The voice said when she answered her phone again. Technology has come so far. Of course, most people won't notice the digital artifacts. They'll just see your sister confessing to your crimes. What do you want? $10 million, transferred to an account I'll specify. Consider it compensation for the disruption you caused. It was extortion, pure and simple. But the threat was real. Releasing the fabricated video could destroy her reputation and potentially trigger criminal investigations that would be expensive and time-consuming to resolve. I need time to consider, she said. 24 hours. After that, the video goes viral across every social media platform and news outlet in Nigeria. As the call ended, Amara realized she was facing a new kind of enemy. One that couldn't be confronted with traditional methods or negotiated with in person. The revenge story that had begun with her husband's infidelity was entering its most dangerous phase. But she hadn't survived this long by backing down from fights, no matter how unfamiliar the battlefield. She picked up her phone and made a call to someone she had hoped never to contact again. Johnson? It's Amara. I need your help one more time. The final battle was about to begin, and this time, the stakes included not just her freedom and reputation, but the safety of an innocent baby who had done nothing wrong except be born into a family torn apart by betrayal and greed. Will Amara find a way to protect her family one final time? The explosive conclusion is coming next. The war room in Adelik's Ikoyi office looked like something from a spy thriller. Multiple screens displaying social media feeds, financial transactions, and encrypted communications channels. Amara sat at the center of it all, baby Chioma sleeping peacefully in her arms, while technicians worked frantically to trace the source of the extortion threat. We've identified at least 17 different digital fingerprints in the fabricated video, Johnson explained, pointing to analysis results on the main screen. Whoever created this used sophisticated techniques, but they made mistakes. Nkem paced nervously by the window, still recovering from childbirth, but insisting on being present for the discussion. The threat against her daughter had awakened something fierce in her that reminded Amara of their mother's protective instincts. Can you prove it's fake? Nkem asked. To technical experts, yes, Johnson replied. To the general public and media outlets? That's much harder. The initial impact of the video will happen before any technical analysis can be completed. It was the perfect modern weapon, capable of destroying someone's reputation instantly, while the truth took weeks or months to establish. The infidelity in marriage that had started their troubles was nothing compared to this digital assault. Amara's phone showed 18 hours remaining until the deadline. 18 hours to find a solution that didn't involve paying extortion to criminals who would likely make additional demands once they realized she was willing to negotiate. There's another option, Adelik said quietly, studying satellite images on his tablet. We've located the source of the transmission. A compound in Abuja, heavily fortified, but not impossible to penetrate. The suggestion hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Direct action against the extortionists would eliminate the immediate threat, but could escalate into open warfare with whatever remained of Kozlov's organization. No, Amara said firmly, adjusting baby Chioma in her arms. I won't start a shooting war that could endanger innocent people. There has to be another way. Her secure phone buzzed with an incoming message from Uncle Taiwo. Check the news. Emergency session of National Assembly called for tomorrow. Your name is being mentioned. The television screens around the room immediately switched to news channels covering the developing story. A leaked document had surfaced suggesting that several prominent business people, including Amara, were under investigation for money laundering and corruption. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. They're coordinating a multi-front attack, Johnson observed grimly. Destroy your reputation with the video, then use the political pressure to freeze your assets and launch criminal proceedings. It was a sophisticated campaign designed to overwhelm her ability to respond effectively. While she dealt with one crisis, others would multiply until her entire empire collapsed under the weight of accusations and investigations. Ma'am, one of Adelik's technicians called out, we're getting unusual activity on your business accounts. Multiple banks have issued temporary freezes pending regulatory review. The financial assault had begun even before the deadline expired. Someone with serious political connections was coordinating this attack, using government resources alongside criminal extortion. Baby Chioma began crying, as if sensing the tension in the room. As Amara rocked her gently, she realized that the innocent child in her arms represented everything she was fighting to protect. Family, future, the possibility of peace after years of betrayal and violence. I have an idea, Nkem said suddenly, her voice gaining strength. What if we beat them at their own game? Everyone turned to look at her. Despite everything she had endured, Nkem's mind was sharp, calculating in ways that reminded Amara of their shared genetics. The video is fake, but what if we made a real one? Nkem continued. I tell the truth about what happened in London, about being drugged and forced to record statements I don't remember. I explain how they manipulated me from the beginning, how they used my pregnancy as leverage. It was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of denying the existence of incriminating videos, they would get ahead of the story by releasing the truth first. We need corroborating evidence, Johnson said, warming to the idea. Medical records from your treatment in London, testimony from the doctors who treated you, digital forensics on the fake video. And we'd need a platform that couldn't be suppressed or discredited, Adelik added. Something with enough reach to counter whatever narrative they're planning to push. Amara's mind raced through the possibilities. A coordinated media strategy, leveraging social media alongside traditional outlets, could potentially turn the entire situation around. But it would require perfect timing and flawless execution. How long do we have? She asked. 15 hours until their deadline, Johnson replied. But based on the banking freezes and political maneuvering, I'd say we have maybe 6 hours before they start the full assault. It would be the most intense 6 hours of her life, requiring every skill she had developed as a businesswoman and every ally she had cultivated in her rise to success. Nkem, she said, turning to her sister, are you strong enough for this? They'll attack everything, your character, your past, your motivations. It won't be easy. Her sister's smile was fierce, protective, reminiscent of their mother defending her children against neighborhood bullies decades ago. Let them come. I've been through worse, and I survived. Besides, she looked down at baby Chioma, I'm not just fighting for myself anymore. The next several hours blurred together in a frenzy of activity. Nkem recorded her testimony in high definition, speaking clearly and emotionally about her manipulation, captivity, and forced participation in creating fake evidence. Medical experts provided documentation of the drugs found in her system during her London rescue. Digital forensics specialists prepared detailed analysis of the fabricated video's technical flaws. Meanwhile, Amara worked her network of contacts in media, politics, and business to arrange simultaneous release across multiple platforms. The story would break at 6 a.m. Lagos time during peak morning news consumption, giving it maximum impact before the extortionists could react. As dawn approached, Amara stood once again on her penthouse balcony, watching the sun rise over Lagos. The city that had witnessed her rise, her betrayal, and her fight for survival would soon witness what she hoped would be her ultimate vindication. Her phone rang at exactly 6 a.m., the distorted voice from the day before, but this time there was anger instead of confidence. "You made a mistake, Mrs. Emeka. A very expensive mistake." "Did I?" Amara asked calmly, watching the first social media notifications begin flooding her phone. "Check the news." The silence that followed was satisfying. Across Lagos, Abuja, and beyond, Nkem's story was spreading like wildfire. The narrative of a pregnant woman drugged and forced to create fake evidence against her sister was compelling, sympathetic, and completely undermined the extortionist strategy. "This isn't over," the voice said finally. "Yes, it is," Amara replied. "Whatever you release now will be seen as retaliation against victims who found the courage to speak truth. You've lost the information war before it even began." But her victory came with a price. Even as public opinion shifted in her favor, she knew that somewhere in the shadows, dangerous people were planning their revenge. The domestic betrayal that had begun with a cheating spouse had evolved into something that would require vigilance for years to come. 2 hours later, her phone rang with a call from the Attorney General's office. The investigation triggered by the leaked documents was being suspended pending review of new evidence, Nkem's testimony, and the technical analysis of the fabricated video. "Mrs. Okafor," the official said, using her maiden name in a gesture of respect, "the government of Nigeria extends its apologies for any inconvenience this matter may have caused. We are committed to protecting citizens from this type of digital manipulation." It was as close to a complete vindication as she could hope for. But Amara had learned not to trust victories that came too easily. That evening, as Lagos settled into its usual chaos of traffic and commerce, she sat with Nkem and baby Chioma in the nursery, finally allowing herself to believe that the worst was over. "What happens now?" Nkem asked, gently feeding her daughter. "Now we build something better," Amara replied. "For her," she gestured to the baby, "and for the family she'll grow up in." The infidelity in marriage that had destroyed her relationship with Chike had ultimately led to something unexpected, a stronger bond with her sister and a determination to create a legacy worth protecting. Her phone buzzed with a final message from Johnson. "Threat neutralized. Remaining asset seized. Your slate is clean. Congratulations on winning a war most people never knew was being fought." As she tucked the phone away, Amara realized that survival had transformed into something more valuable, the knowledge that she could protect the people she loved against any enemy, no matter how sophisticated their weapons or cruel their intentions. The story that had begun with betrayal was ending with redemption, but more importantly, it was beginning a new chapter where family loyalty was stronger than any force that had tried to destroy it. Outside, Lagos continued its eternal dance of ambition and survival. But inside the penthouse, 3 generations of women were finally at peace. But in the shadows of the city, new players were already moving into position, drawn by the power vacuum and the reputation of a woman who had survived everything the underworld could throw at her. The next chapter of her story was yet to be written, but Amara Okafor was ready for whatever came next. What an incredible journey! What did you think of Amara's final victory over her enemies? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with anyone who loves stories of resilience and revenge. Which part shocked you the most? Let me know where you're watching from, and hit that notification bell for more gripping tales of betrayal, survival, and ultimate triumph. Thanks for following this incredible story of domestic betrayal, family loyalty, and the unbreakable spirit of a woman who refused to be defeated.